You built a life your parents never had, and somehow that success made the room go quiet instead of loud. There is a moment that almost everyone who has out-earned their parents knows by heart. You mention a number, a raise, a bonus, a new apartment, a business finally turning a profit, and you watch your parents' face do something strange. Not quite pride, not quite joy. Something more careful than that. A pause, a recalibration, a flicker of something that looks almost like fear, quickly covered by a smile that arrives half a second too late. You tell yourself you imagined it. You tell yourself you are being dramatic, that of course your parents are happy for you, that money has nothing to do with love. And then you go home, and you sit with that pause a little longer than you meant to, because some part of you knows exactly what it means. This is not a video about being ungrateful. This is not a video about resenting the people who raised you. This is a video about something almost nobody says out loud, something that happens quietly in millions of families, something that shapes how you see yourself long after you have left your childhood home. It is about how the way your parents respond to your income, whether it is $20,000 a year or $1 million a year, becomes a mirror. And sometimes that mirror is cracked. Here is the first open loop, and I want you to sit with it. Why does a parent, someone who is supposed to want the absolute best for you, sometimes feel threatened by your success instead of proud of it? That question is going to follow us through this entire video, and the answer is not what you think. Here is the second. Why do so many high-earning adults quietly downplay their income around their own parents, softening the truth, rounding numbers down, hiding new purchases, almost as if they are protecting their parents from something? What exactly are they protecting them from? And here is the third, the one that stings the most. Why does out-earning your father specifically, not your mother, not your siblings, but your father, so often become the moment where the relationship shifts in ways nobody can quite explain? We are going to answer all three, but first, let's talk honestly about what is actually happening in these homes. If you grew up in a household where money was tight, where your parents worked long hours for modest paychecks, where sacrifice was the family language spoken every single day, then your relationship to your own income is never just about numbers. It is about identity. It is about loyalty. It is about an unspoken contract that says, "We struggled so you could have it easier." But somewhere inside that contract is a smaller, quieter clause that almost nobody admits to, which is, "Please do not have it so much easier that it makes our struggle feel small." This is not because your parents are bad people. Most of them are not. Most of them love you fiercely and would say, without hesitation, that they want you to succeed beyond anything they ever achieved. But wanting something and feeling comfortable when it actually happens are two very different things. And here is a harsh truth wrapped in a comforting one. Your success is not the problem. Their unresolved relationship with their own limitations is the problem, and you simply became the mirror standing in the room. Let's go deeper, because there is a version of this that almost nobody talks about, and I want to say it plainly because I think a lot of you need to hear it. When you earn more than your father specifically, something ancient gets activated. For generations in most cultures, a father's income was quietly treated as the ceiling of the household, the benchmark of what success even meant. It was not written anywhere. Nobody sat you down and explained it. But it was absorbed, the way children absorb everything, through tone, through comparisons, through the subtle hierarchy of who gets listened to at the dinner table. So when a son or a daughter crosses that ceiling, even by accident, even without ever trying to compete, it can unconsciously feel to a father like a scoreboard just changed. Not because he is petty, not because he does not love you, but because his entire generation was taught that providing was the primary measure of a man's worth. And now here you are, doing it faster, easier, or bigger than he ever could. I want to pause here and say something important, because I know some of you are already feeling defensive on behalf of your parents, and some of you are already feeling seen in a very raw way. Both reactions are valid. You are not a bad child for noticing this dynamic, and your parents are not villains for struggling with it. Two things can be true. They can love you completely and still feel a complicated tightness in their chest when your success outpaces theirs. That is not betrayal. That is human. And here is a question worth sitting with, and honestly, I would love to know your answer in the comments. Do you think it is possible to fully celebrate someone's success while still quietly grieving your own unmet potential at the exact same time? Now let's talk about what this actually looks like day to day, because it rarely shows up as open conflict. It shows up in smaller, sharper ways. It shows up as backhanded comments disguised as concern, like asking if you are working too hard, or whether all that money is really worth missing family dinners for. It shows up as sudden, unsolicited advice about how you should be saving, investing, or spending differently, even when you never asked. It shows up as comparisons to relatives who are, quote, more humble with their success. It shows up as jokes at gatherings that land just a little too pointed to be fully jokes. And on your side, it shows up as the quiet editing you do without even realizing it. You stop mentioning certain purchases. You round your salary down when someone asks. You downplay a promotion. You wear something simpler to a family event. You do this not because you are ashamed of what you built, but because some part of you learned, very early, that your growth needs to be managed carefully around the people who raised you, so it does not accidentally make them feel small. This is the deeper diagnosis, and I want to say it clearly because clarity is the beginning of freedom. You are not responsible for regulating your parents' emotions about your own success. Let that sentence land. You did not build your life to threaten anyone. You built it to survive, to grow, to give yourself the stability your younger self did not have. Their discomfort, if it exists, is theirs to process, not yours to shrink for. But here is where this video turns, because understanding the pattern is only half the work. The other half is learning how to hold your success and your relationship with your parents in the same two hands, without letting one crush the other. And there is a simple, quiet system for that. One that does not require confrontation, does not require guilt, and does not require you to pretend your life is smaller than it is. The first part of this system is what I call honest softness. This means you stop hiding your success, but you also stop performing it. You do not need to announce every win like a headline, and you do not need to bury it like a secret either. You simply let your life be visible, calmly, without apology and without spectacle. Truth without performance disarms almost every defensive reaction, because there is nothing to compete with when you are not competing yourself. The second part is separating love from comparison. Every time you notice a parent making a comparison, whether it is about money, career, or lifestyle, quietly remind yourself that comparison is often just an old wound speaking in disguise. It is not really about you. It is about a version of their life they never got to live. You can hold compassion for that wound without absorbing it as your own failure. The third part, and this is the one that changes everything, is redefining what success actually means inside your family story. Instead of framing your income as proof that you surpassed your parents, frame it internally as proof that their sacrifices worked. You are not the after picture that makes their before picture look inadequate. You are the continuation of everything they tried to build, just further down the road than they were ever able to walk. If any part of this is resonating with you, if you have ever felt that strange tightening in a room when you mentioned good news to a parent, this next part matters because we are just getting to the piece most people never figure out on their own. And if you want more of this, the kind of clarity that actually explains the quiet, confusing parts of family and money and identity, this channel is where we unpack exactly that, calmly, honestly, one video at a time. Subscribing simply means you will not miss the next piece of this puzzle. Now, Let's close the loop on the father question, because I promised you an answer. When you out-earn your father, the relationship does not have to shift into competition. It can shift into something far more powerful, which is mutual respect between two men or two people who understand sacrifice differently but equally. You can openly acknowledge what he built with less, while quietly building more with the tools he never had access to. That is not disrespect. That is legacy. And most fathers, even the ones who struggle to say it out loud, secretly want exactly that from their children, even when their face does not know how to show it yet. Here is the final truth I want to leave you with. Money will always reveal things in families that silence usually hides. It reveals old wounds, old hierarchies, old definitions of worth that were never actually true to begin with. But it can also reveal something beautiful, which is how far love can stretch when it is given room to grow past comparison. You are allowed to succeed loudly. You are allowed to build a life bigger than the one you came from. And you are allowed to still love deeply and patiently the people who could not build it with you, but who gave you the very first tools to build it alone. So the next time you feel that small pause in the room when you share good news, do not shrink. Do not apologize for your growth. Just breathe, stay soft, stay honest, and let your life speak quietly for itself. Because real success was never about leaving your family behind. It was always about becoming someone strong enough to carry them forward with you, even when they do not yet know how to walk beside you the same way.